Hello everyone, my name's Stonesy Boy and welcome back to Reading with Stonesy. Today we are reading pages 82 to 101 and surprisingly chapters 16 to 21, which means 6 of these pages should be half pages, meaning in total today we'll be reading 13 pages, although we're reading 17 pages if I'm not mistaken. More like 19. So, without further ado, let's begin. Chapter 16. Olivia's predictions proved correct. It only took another week for the media to be distracted by some other inanity, like a city council member taking bribes or some such nonsense. There will be reported of the House of Horrors and the two men in the mask because one hell of a story they love to play backseat investigators. Most of their attention focused on the police and the lack of the progress in the investigation, insinuating police incompetence without coming right out and saying it. It served their agenda in creating fear in the community, scaring the public, improved ratings and circulation sales, with headlines reading, "Jackal still at large, police are clueless." Olivia felt sorry for the detective with the terrible mustache. He must have under enormous pressure and he didn't appear equipped to deal with it. The main reason the media fans left was simple. Olivia didn't give him an interview. He hid in her house most of the time and she imagined the powers that their resources could be better spent elsewhere. Lucy didn't have the same reservations about speaking with the media. She had already been on one local morning show. Her light, colorful hair, wonderful almond-shaped eyes, and slim figure made for a beautiful heroine in a public ate it up. Olivia suspected Lucy had being paid to appear on the shows and had the biggest feelings about it. She thought Lucy was at least making something positive out of negative. Maybe talking about it would help her recover. But then she thought it wasn't her story, though, was it? It belonged to Olivia and Jen, too. Just because Olivia wanted to put it behind her was not disguising it with the media vultures didn't mean Lucy did. Olivia believed it was dangerous to keep stirring it up instead of letting it fade away. Dangerous for all of them. Her appearing on a talk show circuit might renew interest in the media. Olivia liked not having the media camp down on their lawn. It helped her breathe a little easier with them gone. Less media cover, less exposure, less chance of the Jackal might seeing her on TV and inciting him to visit her one night, and so he could finish what he started. Olivia wanted the media to leave her alone, and she could have time to think without taking heads pressuring her to discuss what she went through with some gruesome detail. Then it all faded into black and white memories, and their power had diminished. Then maybe she could talk to Lucy and Jen about it. Funny it was okay to yap about it as if she felt it was okay. She took her head to herself. Still, she would need to talk to them eventually. All those nagging questions, not to her, but why he tried to rape her or speak to her. Now that she wasn't relieved, the grill had been more than enough. It had made her think she might know him. If he had spoken, who would she have recognized his voice? Her arm rippled in goosebumps at the possibility. With thoughts like that, how could she ever feel safe again? Her dad told her the cops had investigated the hell out of Dale. She had just broken up with him after moving into the university. He was an ex-boyfriend. He had upset, obviously, the prime suspect. The ex-boyfriend always is. In the end, they had nothing to go with. They presumed time with her abduction. He said he had been home watching a movie he rented through YouTube. He provided them with an online receipt anticipating the date and time he rented it. It matched up. Although, didn't you have 24 hours to watch it? There had been some type of time constraint on it. Didn't mean he couldn't have grabbed her. Thinking down maybe the Jackal was ridiculous to her. They were the same age, grew up together, and had some friends. So how did he meet Sean Grady? How did he meet the leader of a torture duo? He could tell by the body language the deference shown by Sean, and the Jackal was leader of the little torture club. Besides, the Jackal looked a lot bigger than Dale. It was possible her projection of fear made him seem bigger, but Dale always had a kind, gentle. The Jack's kindness came at an expense of pain. Without her pain, the torture, he wouldn't bandage her or paint her nails or comb her hair. Jackal had been kind because he couldn't have any other way. Dale wouldn't be the Jackal. It didn't make sense on so many levels. An absurd idea with the power and niggle on her brain. And why did the Jackal never talk to her? Why did he never rape her? He may have been saving her for something, or he could have had a scar or tattoo she might recognize. For whatever reason, she had fixated on her, something different than the other girls. Didn't it ruin the fantasy he concocted in his head? What if he ever intended to her and get out of there? She knew he didn't. When that would matter if he knew him? He would get to the wanted from her and kill her, hang her on the hook in the freezer and dine on later. Fuck. Why couldn't she just been some Zen master that could let her go and walk around the gentle smile and inner peace etched into her face, happy to be alive, not a corpse on a hook in an insane man's freezer? Instead, she huddled in her house terrified, expecting a shadow wearing a Jackal mask to walk past her window. She had been started into carrying a knife around with her. Ever since her dad went back to work, she had been left home alone in the house. She was afraid to leave her room and wasn't home. Every creak menaced her. A wind pushing and pulling in the house jellied her legs. A dog barking in the distance had her peering in the window, expecting to see Jackal's tall frame moving down the side of the house. She wanted to get through with it. She knew her dad had to go to work and couldn't stay home forever. If he did that, they would end up living in a box in an alley. She fought the urge to call him, although the fear sometimes paralyzed her to the point where she didn't even leave her room to eat. She knew he set a house alarm for her before he left. We knew he around the house to see if there were any footprints in the snow. He called it checking the perimeter and would flash her extravagant salute. He did everything so to make her feel safe. He even called the police station to make sure the patrol cars would cruise by her house in case the vigilance began to lag. Even if this knowledge and the firm belief that the jackal would be a complete idiot to try and nab her and the pressure continued to build inside. She used the washroom with the door open. He wanted to close it, but what if he opened the door and here he stood, reaching for her, his breath sounding forced behind the mask. Irrational, she knew it, but how to suppress it, no idea. She lasted 2 days before she called her dad at work, voice condensed into a terrified whisper, asking him to come home while hiding in her closet. He did, and he brought with him a knife, a 6-inch Bowie knife, complete with a sheath and attachable belt and a hang on her waist. He liked it a lot. The blade gleamed. She studied her eyes, and the wide-eyed terror she normally saw staring back was gone. Most of the time she wore track pants. They were comfortable, and who the hell did she have to impress? She didn't want to acknowledge she got used to wearing them in a room when she hadn't kept and wore them out of the familiarity as much as anything else. She wore the belt over them when she could attach the knife to it. She had patted it throughout the day, reassured by its cold weight. She still hid in her room most of the time. There was too many windows downstairs in her opinion, and only darted out to use the washroom or make something to eat. Day by day the terror lessened and hold on her. She thought she would be reminded of how fear controlled her and her dad came home, and the relief of sight him trembled her body. He knew it would better at the time she would have to be patient. 5 years in a basement taught her all about patience, one step at a time. Quite the misfit family. Her dad an alcoholic and she, the terrified scare girl, imprisoning herself in her house. Now might be the time to focus on something, get her mind occupied with something else, like helping her dad, or maybe they would move somewhere else now that the media lost interest. Both of them got a fresh start. For the first time in a long while, a faint stirring of hope flustered in her chest. A fresh start with a nice clean ring to it. Chapter 17. Harry didn't like going to work. No surprise, most people don't. There are a lucky few who have found the dream job, and for them, work became playtime. Playtime you got paid for. Harry didn't mind this job before Olivia had been taken, and he sometimes enjoyed it. When he got used to the brain and he solved a problem no one else could, it provided him with a sense of satisfaction. After she had been taken, it prevented him from going crazy with worry. It gave him something to think about more than it might be, or what might happen to his daughter. Even after the embarrassing incident they had sent him home, didn't mind going after day. It helped him keep sort of a handle on his drinking. Then Olivia came home, and going to work terrified him now because he feared he wouldn't be there when she walked through the door. He feared her return had been a dream, a remarkable dream in which it was impossible it became reality. How many parents still waited for some word of their missing children? He might have been one of those, fighting to breathe, with such a heavy weight on his chest, emitting life drifting through a fog. In a space between thoughts, terror's fingers would crush her heart. He would want to call her, to hear her voice, and how to return was real. He worried it, because it was fear more than he did that. He couldn't imagine how she functioned, escaping such an insane situation, being thrust back into a world where beds weren't bolted to the floor, and men with an animal mask were no longer visited her room on a whim. Instead, he called the detective almost daily to check on the status of the investigation to see if officers were driving by the house. No updates, and yes, they were driving by. He loved him when she called, asking him to come home, and felt guilty but loving it. He shouldn't be happy he was so scared at home she called him, should he? He didn't mean he would come home to her. It meant that her return hadn't been a dream. His boss had been very accommodating. He had 2 kids of her own, and understood she needed to leave when Olivia called, but at some point, it would have to stop. Olivia knew it too. Her calls came less frequently, and he found himself spending entire days at work without a call from her. It nagged at him, and he lost time wondering if she was up to and if she was okay. Harry called Olivia before leaving work every day to see if she needed anything, or for him to pick up on the way home, if he had been running low on booze. He would make a quick stop to resupply. He knew his drinking worried her. He noticed her watching him when she got another beer. He worried about himself too. And then she returned. He hadn't been carried away with the booze intake and wouldn't even explain to himself why he continued. She was home, right? There would be no reason to keep drinking. Most times he would be pissed halfway through dinner, slurring his words and staggering in the washroom, confused on how he got drunk so fast. Livy's eyes would remain on him, an unconcerned frown drawing lines between her eyebrows. He wanted to stop. Oh God, how he wanted to stop. It amazed him at the level of self-deprivation required to keep going. To lie to yourself that you know is still convince yourself you'll quit tomorrow or the next day. And all you need to do is one more drink. One more taste before you shut down for good. It never was one more taste. One more taste became one more bottle. Became one more case. You're goddamn drunk. How is it one person can hate themselves in the moment and cheer themselves the next with a bottle of booze in hand? Truth is, Harry loved to drink. It's simple. That was what made it so scary. The alcohol hitting his lips to the anxiety he lifted with. It turned ocean waves into fear of gentle ripples. It made his mind empty. It erased every fear and amplified self-dissipation. And when he called Olivia before going home, she sounded nervous. Although she'd spent in the closet again, he hoped she hadn't. He wiped a hand across his lips. Something he knew he did when he felt like a drink. Was there any beer in the fridge? He could remember. He thought there might be some in his memories, but such things tended to blur together, become an amorphous blob. He picked some up on the way home. He logged off the computer, threw on his coat, nodded, and smiled his way to his car. His buzzy hand wiping at the upper lip, anxious as a cold bottle pressed against it, and let the amber liquid flow into his stomach, satisfying his need. Yeah, he should stop for a case. It didn't matter if he had too much beer in the fridge, or it didn't matter if he didn't have enough. Chapter 18. You think this will work? Frank said. Olivia had called him earlier this week, planning an intervention for her dad. Sounded lame, even in their own head. Sounds so dramatic. She preferred to think of his life asset to stop the slow self-immolation of her dad seemed hell-bent on. And when she left Frank in the front door, she knew his question referred to the intervention she was planning. He responded by engaging in an awkward hug. He noticed the knife on her waist. He didn't always been reluctant to touch her, as though it had been relating to care or something. He cared about her in his own way, a familial obligation that dictated some interest in her well-being. She knew that, but he'd never depended on him or anything before. They had never been really close in the pattern of amiable acquaintance. Would take a while to reassert herself. Olivia found herself reluctant to let others in. She trusted her father and she needed help, and it was the reason he caused Uncle Frank to come over. Because she wanted Harry to get better. She offered Frank coffee. He accepted, and then she placed himself on the couch, the crease in her brow deepening in the wavering of every car. It has to, Olivia said, her arms hugging her knees as she peered out in the window, waiting for her dad. Her hand stayed away from her knees and a finger played with the remaining tissue of her ear. She pulled her head down over it. Frank stood, leaning against the wall, almost looking bored. He turned the coffee cup in his hand and said, I could really do with a beer right about now. She rolled her eyes at him. Not funny. It shifted his gaze from the window and said, You're right, sorry. I'm just not comfortable with this whole intervention thing. He needs it. I don't see it. I mean, sure, he has to drink now and then, but don't we all? Of course you don't see it. You're never here. Don't turn this around on me. I'm not. This is about you at all. I'm stating facts. This is the first I've seen you since, I wasn't in the country. You were supposed to come over for the dinner that one time and canceled, remember? But that doesn't matter. Point is, you're not here. And if you're never here, you can't see it I see every day. I'm telling you, he needs help. He drinks himself stupid every night. Not 1 or 2 nights a week. Every night. I want my dad back. I need my dad back. If you don't want to help, by all means, leave. I never said that. And then, I'll do what I can. The key turned in the lock. Harry walked in, saw Frank and smiled. It made him look young. He carrying a case of beer in his hands. Frank, holy shit, where did you get in? Frank shuffled his feet, his lips jerking into a semblance of a smile, then faded away. Harry snapped back at Olivia, confusion fogging his eyes. Dad, it's time we talked. About what? But he knew. The panic flared his nostrils, and without realizing it, he hugged the case of beer to himself, protecting it away from running backward into football. For Harry, it would be going to be a long night. The hard part was expecting that he needed help. He knew that ages ago, and even though he preferred to ignore it, it would help copious amounts of alcohol and strive their elective shield called denial. The hard part was giving up, not drinking anything. Sweat dotted his brow. He wanted to turn around and run into the night. He even glanced back over his shoulder. His door was closed. Olivia took the case from under his arm. He clenched his hands, refusing to let go for any instant. He recently, and Olivia exhaled, relieved. She handed the case to Frank and stood against the wall, his mouth a tight, grim line. His voice wavering. Harry said, Now what? Now we get you some help, Dad. He hugged him, and his body trembled. That night, Harry attended his first Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. Olivia sat on one side of the book, and Frank, looking equally bored and embarrassed, sat on the other. The stories had all different yet discernibly similar feel in Harry's ears as he listened. They affected him deeply. His eyes glistened and his lips wiggled tremendously throughout the meeting. These men and women were him. The self-loathing, the hatred, the nights choosing a bottle over a loved one, they were all him. Externally they appeared different. Some looked homeless with dirty clothes, unwashed scent, and unshaven countenances. Others could be dock workers, truck drivers, nurses, doctors, lawyers, all varying in education levels and income, yet all the same in one way. Alcohol ruled them. Alcoholism would decimate and humble anyone. The great leveler, like any disease, it chose whom it affected indiscriminately, and the person carried it like a black mark of the rest of their life. There was no just one drink with people such as these. One drink lit a fire, that dark part of the soul that they needed and continually fed. One drink led to a waking up in prison in a vomit bib with their shirt over their night. They would remember lying beside a person they didn't know, head throbbing and reaching at the nearest bottle just to take the edge off. Had Harry been as bad as that? No. But on more than one occasion he dangled over the precipice, one foot on solid ground, the other wavering over a dark hole, hungry for him. desperate to grind him up. Now Olivia returned, and she pulled and tugged him away from the gaping maw of oblivion. He wanted her father back. She deserved him, and he agreed with her. Every night for 2 weeks they attended a meeting. Not Frank. He had enough the first night, saying he was busy with work, blah blah. They were not always in the same meeting room, or even in the same building, so new faces showed and new stories were told. Harry never considered himself a spiritual person. 12 Steps, written by 1952, contained a lot of references concerning God and surrendering to him. It made Harry uncomfortable. To read him over and over, then repeat him to himself in a quiet room, and when first came upon him, and soaked his sheets in desire to give up. He sometimes dreamed of drinking a river of alcohol, filling him with equal parts of guilt and immense satisfaction, and woke up wanting to be shred the 12 Steps book with his bare hands. He spoke to Olivia about the religious aspect. Near the end of the second week, they sat at the kitchen table with even a cup of coffee before them. The steam snaked into the air. She asked him the process she felt about it. He said, "Sometimes it's hard to take it seriously, even though I can't imagine anything more serious, the God stuff. I've never been a big believer. One guy told me it helped. He read about it loud, and whenever the urge to drink came on, he patted his pocket. I carry a copy of it with me, the 12 Steps, and if I had to read it out loud, and for some reason it does help, it could be a repetition of words, you know? It's kind of like meditation. It calms me, so I like that part of it. It's the God part I have trouble reading. I stumble through it." He got out of the book. "It feels outdated. A manual another time." He said, "Can I have a look? I'd like to read them." "Sure." He flattened the pages on the counter. She inwardly cringed every time her scared hand appeared, loving normal everyday things. If she noticed, he never gave any outward indication. The coffee steamed before her concentrated brow. In silence, she read. "Finished," he said. "It's not outdated. That's exactly what you need." "How so?" "The repeating theme, the steps of powerless, and admitting you have no control over alcohol." "Yeah. So the way I read it, it's like you can't turn yourself into more help because you've tried and failed every time. So you substitute yourself with something better, something that loves you even though you often hate yourself, something that truly sees you. It encourages you and stand before an other being, God. Whoever completely naked, all deceit stripped away. It forces introspection. So the God thing, it doesn't matter, not really. The point is people lie to themselves all the time to rationalize bad decisions or keeping drinking or whatever. And the other you can't lie to because it sees all. So you're not praying to God, you're praying to self inside you. And the other that sees past the bullshit and won't let you pull the wool over your own eyes. It's always been there. It's just been hogtied and shackled by the need of alcohol. You're providing it the key. And if you happen to believe in God, the easier it is to submit. You shouldn't struggle with something inconsequential. In the end, the purpose is truth. To find out the way you drink, then you can heal. And if you're lucky enough to understand it, you can share the knowledge with others. He felt better about the conversation every time he had read the 12 Steps after. He never jumbled over the G word again. He felt well on his way to recovery and cautioned himself each time to take it slow because alcohol addiction wasn't a beast easily tamed. Olivia proved to him that the motivation, and although he knew it had been a lifelong battle, there was a wisdom to the advice taking every day one at a time. Sometimes he would go a whole morning without even thinking about drinking, and it wouldn't surprise him into smiling. He looked forward to going a whole day, hell, a whole week without rubbing his hand over another lip, imagining the bubbly suds breaking over his tongue. It would be the time to celebrate, with coffee, maybe in a fancy mocha. Yeah. 3 weeks into the program, Harry considered a sponsor. He told of most successful recoverers of all had one. He would be someone to call, an alcoholic like him. When the urge became too strong and the demons pressed against the window at night, something of frosty mugs of beer in each hand. Having someone to talk to, who has always walked the same road as you, increased the chance of recovery and abstinence. Maybe Olivia had acted as a cigarette sponsor. Smart kid, that one. She had plans for him. They always knew she wanted to move. They have been looking for places, not too far from his work yet, far enough where they could feel like they're doing new, and of course, so the jackal had a harder time finding her. Making life chances a little while in every stage of recovery is discouraged. He could tell Olivia couldn't wait any longer. She prowled the house, danced out the windows, always tapping a knife at her waist. Terrified, a bad guy knew where he lived, and she would pay her a visit. To tell the truth, that scared the crap out of Harry. Every time he walked into their home, he caught up to her, and for a split second before she answered, his guts coiled in turmoil, expecting silence in return. Compared to her, after she'd been through, his fear placed against it, and a realization did nothing to lessen his own terror. Feelings were hard to compare well people because they were so personal and subjective. So they were going to move, and he would have just enough to deal with it. He reviewed the real estate sites in his lunch hour. He hoped to find a place at a price range and not too far away from his work. The idea of his long commute fighting traffic wasn't appealing to him. The move was the second part of her plan. They talked of it one night, and Harry, unable to sleep in his sweaty, pulsating hands, crept in the kitchen with a glass of water to clear his head. If there had been a bottle of anything lying, he would have downed it in one go. Before his meeting at Alcoholics Anonymous, Olivia had him walk her around the house to collect all the alcohol he had hidden. Every cache had been found. She had found all the small bottle of whiskey he put in the back of the toilet, his emergency stash, even though she would have loved to take a nip of anything. There was nothing left. Olivia had seen to that, and she thought the urge to buy more every day leaving work. It lessened every day, but sometimes the urge to drink tackled him and held him down like a bully, as if it were saying, "Thought I was done with you, punk? Not by a long shot. You and me are welded together at the soul. Go ahead and have a drink. You know you'll just give in." So that night he went to a glass of water because there was nothing in the house to have stores were all closed. And lucky to him that they were. He would have crept out a bottle of something, if anything. And he was sweating about it in the kitchen and didn't notice Olivia walk in, and she did. Her presence startled him, and her face reddened with guilt. Being Olivia, she had to comment on it. Instead of peeling an orange, she smiled at him and said, "Couldn't sleep either?" "No, I don't know why. What about you? What woke you up?" "That night. The wind, snow pellets tapping on the window. Take your pick. All noises are scary at night. I'm so tired, Dad. Tired of being scared most of the time. I'm sorry." She shrugged. "Is there anything we can do about it?" He nodded, popping a slice in her mouth. Then she finished chewing the said, "I'm working on it. Part of the three-step plan to help me feel safe. Feel safer, anyways." Harry, with water in one hand, said, "Three-part plan, huh? What are all the parts?" "Part 1, Operation Get Daddy Sober. Part 2, give the bad guy a slip by moving. Part 3, it's a secret." "Even from you?" "Oh, I know what it is. I'm ready for it and not ready for it, you know? Like looking through the tops of your skis before you're looking down the giant hill. It's getting scary, but so unsure if you want to go with it." "Really? Now I'm intrigued." She winked. And that's what the last they talked about it. Curious, very curious. He was anxious, the move done, so he could see what the Ep3 was. The move would be a big change. By any change to be avoided on the journey with sobriety, he would have to get a sponsor idea a little more consideration. For now, he would be there for Olivia and would have to be enough. On the computer screen was a real estate site. A house caught his eye. A smaller house. Still, the two of them would need a lot of room. It was close to work. Hell, really close. He could bite to it in the summer. Even better, the house was situated a block from the police station. Why was it so low priced in the city? A fully detached bungalow. Must be something wrong with it. He pursued the upbeat description and saw the problem. A classic fixer-upper. The house needed a lot of work. Over 80 years old? No telling the problems there. Harry and the home renovations didn't do well together. And one step stapled his thumb to a baseboard. Frank still laughs about it. What about Frank? He's a handy bastard. Hell, he owned contractor business. He would help, wouldn't he? Harry would have to pay him, and not just for the materials. It would surprise if he had to pay Frank for his time as frugal jerk. Frank makes Scrooge seem generous, but come on. After what Olivia's been through and the fact they were related, they had to account for something, right? Maybe, maybe not. Frank was a cheap bastard. Harry sent the link to Olivia's iPad. He had sent her about 20 so far, and everyone sent a thrill of excitement through him. Who knew he wanted to move so much? Maybe the excitement through idea of a fresh start appealed to him. The problem lay in the fact that although the place may be new, the same old asshole him was moving there. The thought of nothing to diminish his excitement. He glanced at the clock. Time to go. Leaving the office, he couldn't wait to go home and discuss the potential homes with Olivia. The house by the police station. He liked it. He had a scratch. The itch wouldn't go away by ignoring it or trying to find someone new to fill the void. No one could fill it. He would have to accept it. Even before he had taken her, the other girls were too identical to Olivia, and there was no accident. Early on, he recognized he would have to go grab her and make her his. All those other girls, delightful distractions they were, yet they weren't Olivia, not even close. Everything about her touched something inside him. He tingled everywhere, thinking about her. He couldn't stay away. He couldn't think of starting another place without her. He was the key. She was his palpitating heart. He needed her. Her movements strummed the music of his soul. He turned down the street, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles hurt a white and jaw ached from grinding his teeth. The familiar street was near her. He felt her pull on him, like a black hole sucking in matter. He couldn't resist her. He had to see her. They circled the block. Where were the police? Although he knew he needn't be, they could not allocate resources to the girl's protection indefinitely, especially since they believed the jackal was moved on. They didn't conceive the reason why he would return to Olivia and the other girls. Considering all the steps he had taken to remain anonymous, he knew the stupidity of his actions. Even though the police hadn't identified him, he was still taking needless risk. A stupid move. He berated himself to get the hell out of there. A terrible idea, even it being in the area. The Mount Everest of idiocy. Why didn't he even come this way? Time to go. Time to get out of the area. He decided to do just that and surprised himself by parking outside the front of the house 2 doors down to Olivia's. Even worse, he got out of the car and patted his pocket to make sure the stun gun was there. His hard shell reassured him. Was he doing this? Completely crazy still. His feet crunched the snow. Toes pointed inexorably towards her front door. The light above her door spilling across the front step like a golden welcome mat. Chapter 20. Winter in Canada brought the darkness of evening early. Olivia could go into the kitchen. The soft light of day, pleasant backdrop framed by a frosty window, filled a glass of water, and then she looked up. Stars studded in a black sky. It seemed that quick to Olivia, and she noticed the night now. She was attuned to it. Not brought the fear. Night it hid the devils lurking beyond the brightness of her window, and the men wearing animal heads wanting to take her and sneak her away like a princess in a twisted fairy tale. A fairy tale where the currency was an ear, some toes, and fingers as well. The worst time of her day was waiting for her dad to get home. Sitting in the living room, the street outside situated her peripheral vision, the glow of the iPad in her lap. He waited in the headlights of the car that announced his arrival. She used one finger to check the screen. While reviewing the properties her dad sent her, she was supposed to be busy at work. Her other hand trailed fingers of the handle of the knife. It became part of her. He couldn't imagine being without it, and she couldn't ever be. Not if she could help it. And the doorbell rang. To say it started her would be an understatement. She jumped through an iPad, popped off her lap, and landed on the carpet. Her entire body shook as the shots of adrenaline raced through her. She hadn't noticed it hadn't been alert, although someone walked up to her door. She had placed herself by the window for that purpose, so she would have to see outside and prepare for anything. She feared getting complacent. Complacency could get her killed. She had relative safety of the past month just as softened her defiances. She stuffed her knife at her hip. She unbuttoned the tab around the handle and slid the knife out to make sure it was clear of obstructions. From her position to the couch, she could see someone approach up until they reached the front door. Once the person arrived at the door, a pillar blocked her view. She couldn't see anyone walk up to the door. She missed that initial sight and again became disturbed by her lack of awareness. Who was it? The door. She patted her knife to the side and noticing he was holding her breath, exhaled a calm jerking her heart. Her feet touched the carpet. He stood, listening. On silent feet, she crept toward the front door. She could be able to see who stood there in the small window, but then the person could see her too. Aligning herself to continue to the door, she spotted next to her and hold her breath. The jackal wouldn't stand there, would he? He wouldn't be as obvious after being so careful for so long. Didn't make sense. Always better to be safe. No need to rush. Caution was now the rule. She knew who it wasn't. It sure shit wasn't her dad. Her dad would have just walked in and she would have seen the lights of his car pulling. He wasn't expecting anyone else to think of no one she wanted to see. She could ignore the doorbell and wait for the person to go away. Staring at the window in the hallway, Olivia leaned her head closer to see who stood there. She got a glimpse. Her gaze took an aspect someone who had been struck with a hammer. Her mouth lost moisture, and her lips stuck her teeth. The person turned to leave, and Olivia rushed to the door, unlocked it, and swung it open. Dale? Hey, Olivia. They stared at each other. Time and circumstances making them a little more than strangers. Olivia flicked her hair, covered her ear, and moving missing-fingered hand in her pocket, offered a shy smile. Dale said, sorry, I should have called. I didn't have your number anymore. No, that's okay. You want to step in? Yeah, just for a second. I've got to get home. She moved back. She could squeeze in a small foyer, and he shut the door behind him. Talking at once, they said, how have you? It's good to. Olivia smiled and said, sorry, go ahead. It's good to see you. Yeah, you too. It's been so long ago since I've last saw you. 5 years. It's a long time. Pause the conversation gave Olivia time to study the bunny ears that paralleled her shins. Geez, wearing her bunny slippers. Nice one. She lifted her eyes and noticed Dale hadn't changed much, except for the beard. He never had a beard when she knew him, and it was kid then. He was right. 5 years was a long time. The eyes were the same, kind eyes, full of compassion. She felt her own swelling up. He adored her upon the time. He would have done anything for her. How could he like her anymore? Mangled, ugly, used, and abused. What for her? How could he like her anymore? Mangled, ugly, used, abused. What did she have to offer him or anyone? What was he doing here? To remind her that she was lost? Pretty thoughts, and she knew it. So he came to see her because he cared. He always cared. He had always been kind to her and everyone she met. To see him reminded her of all she lost. It hurt her, and she projected her own insecurities onto him. She exhaled, not wanting to lift her head and reveal her shiny eyes. Though she stood in the shadow, the doorbell rang again. He emitted a little yelp. Her hand gripped her knife. Dale noticed the movement and eyes bulged. For a moment she felt ashamed. The door opened behind Dale, and Frank paused, sensing the awkward moment. He said, why's the door unlocked? Hey, Uncle Frank, you remember Dale? His dark gaze eyed Dale with suspicion. No, I don't. I dated him a long time ago. Oh, hi, Dale. Dale nodded and said, sir. Sir, I'm not an army. You can call me Frank. They crowded each other in a small foyer. Olivia wished Frank would just spit out what he came for. Olivia said, Dad's not home yet. What? Oh, yeah, I noticed the car wasn't in the drive. To Dale, Frank said, is your car on the street? Dale said, yeah. I wanted to block the driveway. Dale handed Olivia a piece of paper. Here's my number. Please call me if you did. Okay, I'll do that. Dale smiled. Great. That's really great. Best time to get me is in the evenings. During the day, I'm in class and I have the phone turned off. Olivia said, class? Yeah, second year of law school. How's that going? Good. A lot of work. A lot of reading. But interesting for the most part. Frank stood next to him, frowning, watching the exchange as he squinted eyes. Dale glanced at her and turned to Olivia. Whoa, better get going. Okay, I'll call you. Great. He turned to the door. Frank already had it open for him. Dale stopped at the door and said, you look great, Olivia. Hope you know that. She continued out the door and Frank closed it behind him, a little too hard for Olivia's liking. She said, what's your problem? Mine? What's yours? Staring down like that. Really? Excuse me, do we know who the kidnapper is? Whatever you want to ask. Please, Dale, it's not the jackal. How do you know that? I just do. Very scientific of you. You should join the police force. What are you doing here? His mouth clamped shut and his eyebrows dropped. I left my hammer drill here. I just came by and grabbed it. The doorbell rang. Olivia twitched at her hand and drifted a knife. Frank said, Jesus, relax, would you? Frank opened the door. Swiss chair delivery driver stood on the stop. He wore a bald cap and he held a bag of steaming food in her arms. The pillar cast a shadow in front of the body. Steam was in front of mouth, billowed from the darkness of his face. He said, that'll be $34.50. And Olivia said, I didn't order anything. That number is this, 89? No, the next house over. Which way? Olivia pointed at her. That way? Thanks, sorry about that. No problem. Chapter 21. The next day, the jackal lay in his bed, staring at the sun-cast pillar where the light snuck through the curtains in the ceiling. He didn't want to get out of bed. The covers were warm, and besides that, he couldn't summon the energy. His stomach clenched like a fist. He bounced at the bedside clock. It read 1:37 p.m. He had been up since 4 a.m. Thoughts on Olivia tortured him. Her beauty broke his heart. He had missed his opportunity. He could have taken her away, and they could have been together for as long as she would last. There had been fucking party at their house last night. He didn't have to make it onto their lawn before bolting away. There was no way to do it without a witness. Too much risk right now. After the moment of seeing her, the pain waxed stronger. The very thought of leaving his bed sapped his energy. This must be what they call depression. He had always thought depression affected the weak-minded, those who perpetually wallowed in self-pity like a pig in their pen, too stupid to realize they lived in shit. How could it affect him? The all-powerful jackal, a man of indomitable will. To feel soft didn't seem real. A sigh turned into a sob. Fucking weakling. He swallowed his sorrow as best he could. He grabbed the sheets of it in his fist. He couldn't stay in his bed forever. He had things to do. He needed a reprieve from the pain Olivia's loss caused him. That did he do before. When he desired to take her become so strong, his hand shook. When the image of her lying in her bed in a pink room called to him, suffusing him to need, and he realized he didn't quite ready to destroy her when he had at least been able to visit the others. Pound his anger into the soft flesh supplement Olivia's face and voice. Her screams, her pleas, her pleas. There had always been other girls, the ones he didn't hold out on. Only after he got himself in the fine skin would his desire subside. He could function again, wear the face others saw, never suspecting his terrible true one. He shifted in bed. Was that the answer? To take another in her place? It would have had to be. He would hope to function otherwise. He thought of Jen. Oh, seeing her and Lucy, she resembled Olivia more. The face. The way she cried and pleaded was almost identical to Olivia's. If he took her played out of the fantasies in her head instead of Olivia, it might provide him some breath. But when he did, he would back to the problem of Olivia. He would worry about the later. Thinking about Jen, he became aroused. Depressed people didn't get hard-ons. The grinning and considering Jen. Her despondency troubled him, near to the end. Before she would fear about Olivia, she noticed Jen would escape into her mind. Whenever they entered the room, he would become so detached like a fucking fleshman again. He would consider her the provision room. He would have been there shortly if Olivia had intervened. His erection throbbed. He would break her out of funk. Nothing like a terror to sharpen an otherwise dull mind. Might be time for a visit. Where might she be? At home? He failed to keep an eye on his other girls because he had been mourning the loss. Olivia dominated his thoughts. Since she had escaped him, still, he wouldn't be hard to find her. The news archives would help. And Lucy, she made it talk to show circuits. Not into hiding that one. It would seem like she didn't worry about him. Silly girl. She would be fun to break. Refocusing his goals energized him. Now he had something to look forward to. Planning, hunting, and the taking. All of it culminating in the night and delight and plan of screens. Direction ached. He slipped out of bed. Time for a shower. Time to release. Which one to take first? Jen appeared to be more broken of the two, ready to accept her death. Maybe she had been waiting for all the time, waiting for him. In that regard, it would have been downright rude of him not to make a house call. And that's the end of that. I've been having trouble reading. That's got something stuck in my throat, I think. But I do have good news. Boom! This is the good news. Boom. 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 Anytime now. What is wrong with this? 1 second, please. I don't know what is wrong with this. It should be working fine. I apologize. Alright, now it's working. Fantastic. Okay, note to self when I'm on the final pages to just turn this on. Look at this! It is a It's the whiteboard that's always on my whiteboard. So now I'm able to do this faster. So today we read chapter 16 to 21, 82 to 101. Tomorrow we're reading pages 102 to 115, and as you can see, I can do that, and then I can click this, and then do this. Make it faster. And chapters 22 to 23. Honestly, another couple good episodes. So, yeah, that's cool. I did that for a lot of the future books as well, so, stay tuned for that. Anyways, as you can see, but ding, that one's checked off, and we only have 4 more episodes, or 5. 4, 5? 5. We have 5 more, see? So, hope you guys have a fantastic, wonderful day. If you like, be efficient, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye!